Number 8. Gotham Season 2. Well, as usual, bringing up the rear of our TV season's Best of the Year list, it's Gotham. Now, I usually rewatch each series binge style, but this is the only show I'm doing a season review of without giving it a rewatch. No way am I putting myself through that torture again. So if I forget a certain couple of points I should make, just bear with me. Now, to be fair, in many ways, I think this season was an improvement from last season. It opened real strong. I enjoyed the early portion of the season with the introduction to Theodore Gallivan, played by James Frain. And as I mentioned in my season premiere video, I really like Frain. I think he's a great character actor who's made to order for a villain in a comic book series like this. He and his hot sister Tabitha, played by Jessica Lucas, who strangely looks nothing alike, come to Gotham to settle an old score. Ooh, mystery. He gets a bunch of Arkham inmates to do his bidding, including Jerome from last season, and he was a great character. I'm of the opinion that you shouldn't ever know the Joker's past, but there was no need to kill Jerome off. He was easily one of the most enjoyable villains in the series. And you could have left it vague as to whether or not he would have become the actual Joker. All that matters is that, for all intents and purposes, he was the series Joker. But they killed him off anyway. Such a waste. They also brought back Barbara, as crazy as a loon. It's really remarkable where she went from being one of the most hated characters last season to being one of my favorite characters this season. She was just great, and you can tell the actress Erin Richards really takes to the role more now as a wacko than she did playing the girlfriend. It's like they also tried to make her this universe's equivalent of Harley Quinn. So Sarah Essen dies, which is no big deal since they weren't going to make her and Jim a couple in this universe. And Captain Barnes, played by Michael Chiklis, is brought in to replace her. I really like Chiklis from his portrayal of the Thing back in the day, and playing this kind of tough-as-nails cop is made to order for him. He originally looked to be something of a mentor to Jim before the season soon deteriorated. More on that later. They really gave Ed the lion's share of development this season, which was alright since I enjoy Corey Michael Smith's take on the character. His descent into madness, as it were, over the accidental killing of the object of his affection, Miss Kringle, was kind of a disappointment to me, though. I'd have preferred if Miss Kringle became as demented as he and became his partner or something. The Bruce Wayne side of things was okay for the first half of the season, too. I loved the introduction of Silver St. Cloud into the series, played very aptly by Natalie Allen Lind. I like the triangle of sorts between she, Bruce, and Selina. It also played very well into Bruce's abilities as a tactician, as he plans a clever ruse to expose what Silver knows about Bruce's parents' killer. I don't remember Silver ever being villainous in the comics, but apart from that, it was a very clever subplot. Gallivan's big plan is to sacrifice Bruce Wayne for the crimes the Wayne family perpetrated on his family over a century ago. Selina herself doesn't get too much spotlight this year. The most is the Firefly arc in the first half of the season, where classic Batman villain Firefly is reimagined as a teenage girl who was friends with Selina. I was hoping they'd delve a bit into Selina's backstory with her mom this year, but maybe they're holding off on that for down the line. Bruce also runs off with Selina to learn the ropes of the criminal underworld, but that only lasts like 2 episodes. Penguin gets brushed aside somewhat this season. He has an axe to grind against Gallivan, the newly elected mayor of Gotham, for killing his revered mother. This is where the season goes downhill, right at the mid-season break, as they let Gordon execute Gallivan out of the clear blue. It's completely at odds with the entire premise of the show. Gordon is supposed to be the sole altruistic cop in Gotham, and now he's taking the law into his own hands by executing Gallivan? Now, it would be one thing if he's held accountable for this somehow, but he gets clean away with it, only to be framed by Ed, who is afraid Jim's going to find out he killed Miss Kringle, framing him for killing another cop. It's the most nonsensical, convoluted, unnecessary plot. So we have to go through Gordon going to prison and breaking out of prison with the help of a cameoing Carmine Falcone. It was just the most agonizing stretch of episodes I ever had to sit through in my life, probably topping last season's second half with Fish Mooney on the island. We have Gordon acting completely out of character. He's no longer a cop. It's just, ugh. I came so close to dropping this show again this year, and I have to question why I subject myself to this anymore. Anyway, it didn't get much better in the second half of the season, but one of the few bright spots was the Mr. Freeze arc. Although I don't get why they thought it was clever to pronounce it Fries. If he had a flamethrower, it would be Fries, but with a freeze gun, it should be Freeze. Anyway, I dug the way they handled his story here. The only thing is here, Freeze is already a cold-hearted killer long before the accident, so there's no real transformation from good to evil here. But it's pretty close to classic Freeze otherwise. He's still trying to cure his wife Nora. And the actor playing Freeze, Nathan Darrow, was just perfect. His look as Freeze was great too, though I'd have preferred him to have blue skin. The only other bright spot in the second half was B.D. Wong as Hugo Strange. He really brought an enjoyably nuanced performance to what could have been an otherwise dull character. After torturing Penguin, who took the fall for Galavan's death, into supposed normalcy, Strange releases Penguin back into the world where he meets his father, played by Paul Reubens, aka Pee Wee Herman, in his highly publicized return to the character he played in the prologue to Batman Returns. I liked his portrayal, and both actors played off each other very well, but it's basically a time waster that only serves to have Penguin abused again, bringing him back to his morbidly murderous ways. Eventually, Bruce meets up with Matches Malone, his parents' killer, with the intention to kill him. Bruce finds he can't do it, and Malone offs himself instead. It's not my preferred way of resolving that storyline, but it was fairly effective. So Strange ends up being tasked by what we find out later is the Court of Owls to bring the dead back to life. And guess what? He succeeds! He brings Galavan back and with some brainwashing rechristens him Azrael. Yes, that Azrael, like from the comics. It's a good chance for Frayne to chew the scenery, but he's quickly taken out. How? What is that? Is that a bazooka? He also succeeds in bringing Fish Mooney back, now with the power of persuasion late in the season. I almost expected them to kill her off at the end of the episode as a gag, but unfortunately it looks like they're holding Fish over for a return run next year. Along with all of this, Strange's Arkham is being used as a breeding ground for virtually all of Batman's villains, in a move not unlike the plans from the Amazing Spider-Man franchise to introduce all of Spidey's villains through Oscorp. They introduced Basil Karlo, the Golden Age Clayface, in the final episode, as he masquerades as Jim Gordon, which was admittedly very funny. They also suggest that Mad Hatter and Killer Croc are possible to appear next year, as well as an apparent clone of young Bruce Wayne. Just to wrap up a few loose ends, Butch Gilzean is still around. They kind of dropped the entire mob angle this season in favor of the Rise of the Freaks, but he's still a cool remnant of the first season. He loses his hand, but gains Galavan's sister Tabitha by the end of the season. It's very disappointing that Harvey Bullock also takes a backseat for much of the season. His witty rejoinders were a highlight of Season 1. I was happy to see his girlfriend from the first season, Scotty, come back for an episode, but they quickly forgot her again. Monica Baccarin's Leslie Tompkins gets a reprieve from the dreaded second half of the season by being written out and sent out of Gotham. It's unclear what the plans for her character in the future are. She and Jim were supposed to be expecting a baby, probably originally meant to accommodate the real-life couple of Baccarin and Mackenzie expecting in real life. But then we're told Leslie lost the baby, and by season's end we're left hanging. Oddly enough, Harvey Dent is given next to no screen time this year, regardless of Nicholas D'Agosto getting bumped up to season regular. Well, to wrap this bad boy up, I've got to say it was really no different from last season. I'd hoped they would learn how to pace this season better than last season, but again, they really ran out of gas at the midway point. Now, it seems fashionable to want 13-episode seasons of shows these days. I personally don't advocate it, because I think it's not too much to ask to have a competently made 23-episode season. Except here. They just can't make a compelling 23-episode full season for this show. It inevitably starts out strong only to have them start throwing crap against the wall for the second half and hope that something sticks. And it's not really entirely the showrunner's fault here, since it's not an easy task to make a compelling full season of television out of the concept of a 14-year-old Batman and his 10-year senior proto-villains. It's hard for me to see just who exactly this show is marketed to. Heaven knows it's too gruesome to be a kid's show. It's often too ridiculous to be taken seriously. Do people like it for the whole turn off your brain and have a laugh experience? I just go back to it being a show that's irrelevant in today's landscape. When we have actual bona fide superheroes on TV now like Supergirl, Flash, and Arrow, where is Gotham really supposed to fit in? If we were to rate the show on its two halves, I'd probably give the first half a 3.5 stars out of 5, and the second half a 1.5 stars out of 5. So rounding it off, I'm going to give Gotham Season 2 2.5 stars out of 5, which was exactly my score for Season 1. I think maybe if you traded the Firebug arc for the Mr. Freeze arc, you'd actually have a pretty strong first half of the season there. But I have to wonder if I really want to watch this show again after the last half of this season. I wanted to give this season the benefit of the doubt after last season, where they seemed to have no plan and were writing each week's show by the seat of their pants, since they didn't expect to get picked up for a full season. But if this was the best they could do with a full season to prepare, they really need to seriously consider a 13-episode season, where they can concentrate on delivering a consistently strong season first and foremost. This is Johnnie Torch reminding you yet again, keep the flame burning brightly, and I'll be with you again real soon.